Yellow, yellow. How are you, fellow viewers? We bring to you another episode of Hot Eyes Show on a Sunday. I want to start by apologizing to fellow viewers. I'm sure some of you saw this show on different adverts with a guest who happens to be a former member of parliament for Masvingo Central. Unfortunately, he's not going to join us due to conditions beyond his control. But it would be interesting to have him, especially when discussing the looming resignation of the head of state, because he thinks that that statement wasn't genuine and that statement was political and strategic. Today, the title of our program is President Emerson Mnangagwa Rise, Rule, Prospective, Resignation, and SADC Chairmanship. So we are going to have a number of videos to help us to reflect on this, a particular topic. Before going any further, I would like to remind you, fellow viewers and subscribers, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube, or even contact us on WhatsApp or visit our website, www.humanisttvafrica.com. And for subscription purposes, you can subscribe on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, and TikTok page at Humanist TV Africa. You might think there are some things which we need to improve. Please get hold of us on our email, info@humanisttvafrica.com, or contact us directly on WhatsApp +2 54 74 73 56 76 67. I also want to acknowledge my producer who is behind the scene, Dennis Bongole, all the way from Uganda. We really appreciate the work he does. You never see his face on Hot Eyes Show, but he's the person who is behind producing this program. So many people have mixed feelings when we are talking about the head of state of Zimbabwe, especially around his rise, his rule, and to give a brief about the party he's leading today. The party he's leading today was a breakaway from ZAP. And some people, this is a narrative which majority of people never explored. It is said the current ruling party of Zimbabwe is a project of CIA. Of course, it is a debatable issue because they say it was formed to destabilize ZAP, a party which was led by Joshua Nyong'o Mqhabukongomo, the one whom we discussed his life and legacy in our last Hot Eyes show. And ZANU-PF was actually formed in Harare by 6 people. Unfortunately, all of those people who are actually founding members of ZANU are no more. The likes of Ndabaningi Stole, Henry Amadziripi, Edgar Tekere, Yebedi Chitepo, Leopold Takawira, Mukudzei, Mid. Those were the founding members, and they formed it in the house of Enos Ngala in Harare, in the suburb of Highfield. So yes, the current president is not the founding member of ZANU. By then, the current president was still in ZAP, and ZAP probably it was being stabilized by the CIA, probably because it was being led by a person who was trained in Russia. And as we know, the Western world is not in books. This is something to do with the geopolitical. Actually, when I was actually doing my researches before this program, I was digging out some CIA files, and I actually found an interesting file, which an interesting title. It was written sanitized. And for those who might be interested in that file, I can give you where it is found. You can go on the following website, www.cia.gov/reading room/docs/CIA/RPD 84 5005 S 2R 000 2 000 3 000 2 stroke 4. It's a PDF. So in case you feel like you want to read that, so that's my reflection. So now we want to see the role probably which was played by Zimbabweans, by the army, by the Western world in the rise of the current president of Zimbabwe. For us to help us to do that, let us look at how BBC reported the military takeover which happened in 2017. Now, let us watch the 15-minute video from BBC as they were reporting on the happenings of Zimbabwe in 2017 November.
Zimbabwean capital Harare this afternoon after the army declared overnight that it was taking control of the country. Robert Mugabe, the 93-year-old president who's ruled Zimbabwe since independence from Britain in 1980, has been confined to his home. The British Embassy in Zimbabwe has advised UK nationals to stay indoors until the situation becomes clearer. Our diplomatic correspondent James Robbins reports.
Snatched video, filmed furtively, tells some of the story. Troops on the streets of Harare as the generals take control after 37 years of President Mugabe's increasingly dictatorial rule. Heavy gunfire could be heard in parts of the capital early this morning, but the picture overall is of uncertain quiet. It looks as if the bulk of the army has been moving to secure its hold on Zimbabwe. Soldiers seized the headquarters of the state broadcaster SADC, opening the way for a general to read out this statement.
The situation in our country has moved to another level. Firstly, we wish to assure the nation that His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and Commander-in-Chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, Comrade R.G. Mugabe, and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice. As soon as we have accomplished our mission, we expect that the situation will return to normalcy.
This was President Robert Mugabe last week, very frail, seriously ill, renaming the country's main airport for himself, hoping perhaps to cement still further a cult of personality and try to make the succession of his wife, Grace, at his side more certain. But key military leaders now seem unwilling to see that happen. Mr. Mugabe is now under house arrest, in office, but certainly not in power. And Grace, 40 years his junior, has helped split the entire ruling party, ZANU-PF. She was booed only 10 days ago at a party rally, and the army clearly blames her for leading a faction trying to destroy all opposition. Grace Mugabe is now reported to be out of the country, apparently seeking protection in Namibia. This is the man the army may favour, Emerson Mnangagwa, Mr. Mugabe's vice president, until he fired him last week. Army commanders were determined to stop the purge. He definitely saw himself as a front-runner to succeed until his sacking and flight into exile. Now Britain, the former colonial power, is urging calm.
Our ambassador has been in touch to say that obviously if UK nationals are worried, they should get in touch with our embassy. At the moment, it's very fluid, and it's hard to say exactly how this will turn out. I think the most important point to make is that everybody wants to see a stable and successful Zimbabwe, and I think we're really appealing for everybody to refrain from violence. That's the crucial thing.
Harare does appear to be generally quiet. Zimbabweans will be nervous after enduring decades of often violent rule and the catastrophic economic collapse of a once thriving economy. Zimbabwe's powerful neighbour, South Africa, is also calling for calm and restraint.
I am hoping that the Defence Force will not move and do more damage, that they will be able to respect the Constitution of Zimbabwe as well as the people of Zimbabwe, so that this situation does not go beyond the situation where it is now.
This morning's newspaper headline on the streets of Harare highlights the tension between Army Chief General Chiwenga and President Mugabe. But events have moved a long way since those words were printed. James Robbins, BBC News.
Nyuka Shinghai is the BBC's reporter in Harare. A short time ago, she gave us the very latest on the situation there.
The presence of the military is being felt here on the streets of Harare, and some parts of the city are in lockdown. Now, this is as close as we can get to some of the military tanks that have stationed themselves in strategic positions. One, as you can see here, has blocked off access to the president's office. There's another that's blocked off access to parliament. Now, Zimbabweans woke up this morning to the news that the military had taken control of the capital.
nezvaitika zuva ranhasi toda kuti vazvironga izvozvo ngavarambe vachizviita kusvika zvese zviri kunetsa muno muzimbabwe zvapera.
toda kungotiende kune general chiwenga vatibvisira mhandu munhu anga ichiparadza muri wezimbabwe achadzisa kufara ndo zvatoda kungoti but aiwa zviri kunzi vakabatwa kazvokuti vangosarwa nekuramba chete kuti hainini hangu ndakwana.
In the early hours of the morning, following an evening of gunfire and explosions, the military took over the state broadcaster and they made an announcement that this is not a coup and that President Robert Mugabe is still in charge and that he's the head of state. But as you can see on the street here, it's clear who's calling the shots. The city is subdued and the military have said that they will make arrests of people who they say have destroyed the party, criminal elements around President Mugabe. President Mugabe is expected to make a statement, but the end game of all of this is unclear. The question that many Zimbabweans have is how will this all end? Shingai Nyoka, BBC News.
Well, British nationals living in Zimbabwe are being warned to stay indoors by the Foreign Office. It says, due to the uncertain political situation in Harare, including reports of unusual military activity, we recommend British nationals currently in Harare to remain safely at home or in their accommodation until the situation becomes clearer. The Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, urged everyone in Zimbabwe to refrain from violence.
We're monitoring the situation very closely, as you can imagine, and our ambassador has been in touch to say that obviously if UK nationals are worried, they should get in touch with our embassy. At the moment, it's very fluid, and it's hard to say exactly how this will turn out. I think the most important point to make is that everybody wants to see a stable and successful Zimbabwe, and I think we're really appealing for everybody to refrain from violence. That's the crucial thing.
Let's get the latest now from our correspondent Milton Nkosi, who's in Johannesburg. It looks like a coup, it sounds like a coup, but they're saying it's not a coup.
Well, Simon, if it does look like a coup and sounds like a coup, I'm with you. It looks like a coup to all of us, because once you see an army general on the normal television screen and where there's no broadcast, we hear that there's no broadcast going on ZBC. They've been playing old liberation songs, and on the radio, chants of the Chimurenga, which was the liberation struggle against white minority rule. So it does seem like President Robert Mugabe is under pressure from his own military, and we're still waiting for clarity as to who is now in charge of Zimbabwe.
The clarity that is coming through, this looks like internal politics. This is about the future of ZANU-PF.
Very much so. That is a very important point to make, because what's happened in Zimbabwe, it's not like the opposition has come and taken over the government. This is an internal fight within ZANU-PF. And what had triggered these events was the sacking of the vice president by President Robert Mugabe himself, paving the way for his wife, Grace Mugabe, to take over from him. Now, many in the military who fought in the liberation struggle found that unacceptable. They said Zimbabwe is not a dynasty. They've got to have people who fought for the liberation of the country from colonial rule to be in charge of the country, not someone like Grace Mugabe, who was once a typist in Robert Mugabe's office.
This is quite a gamble, though, because the inevitable question is, what now?
Well, that's why President Zuma had to come in there. He is the chairman of the regional body SADC, that is the neighbors surrounding Zimbabwe, and he sent 2 envoys from South Africa this afternoon to go and speak to President Robert Mugabe directly and to the Zimbabwean Defense Force to try and clarify the situation. You will know that, Simon, the African Union and sub-region like SADC do not accept the unconstitutional change of government, and therefore those who are running Zimbabwe now from the military would know that they would be completely suspended by SADC if they announce that they're in charge. So the likelihood is that they're going to announce that Emerson Mnangagwa, the vice president who was sacked a week ago, will be in charge. And therefore, the party that was elected by the people in the previous election will still be in charge of government.
Milton, thank you so much. Milton Cozy there in Johannesburg. Well, with me now is George Shire, a Zimbabwean political analyst who was in the country as recently, I think, as September. So does what's happened in the last 24 hours come as a huge surprise to you?
No, not at all. Quite rightly, what's been going on has been a struggle for power within ZANU-PF about what could happen or what should happen post-2018 election. And I think the purges, if I can put it that way, been going on in ZANU begins in 2015. They're not a sort of event of the last week. What I was able to notice when I was in Zimbabwe is the overwhelming popular support that Mnangagwa has across the party and across the country. And if you listen to the clip that your correspondent made of the 2 people from the street are talking about, they are happy. They are looking forward to a better Christmas, they say, because that is indicative of the kind of support that you have. So what you're going to see is... Well,
and that's exactly why Robert Mugabe acted, presumably.
Well, just so I could put. What is happening then is a reordering of the leadership of ZANU. Not the same thing as the coup, as most people begin to talk about it. And if you think about it that way, then one has to look again at what the 2 army general statements are and what Zuma has actually said, having almost a choreographing effect. And the question is likely to be how to manage this particular moment so that there is a reclaiming of the heart and soul of ZANU-PF into the next election.
He's 93 years old, but Robert Mugabe still has his supporters, and that's got to be something they're concerned about.
This issue is not about Robert Mugabe versus the people. This has been to do with the Generation 40, they call themselves, who had become kind of excluded, if you like, Robert Mugabe from the traditional support base he had. And that's what brought this thing into focus. So if you listen again to what the army is saying, none of them they continue to describe Robert Mugabe as the commander and leader of the armed forces. They have that respect for him. Perhaps what is comparative is the moment in which the previous leader of ZANU, Ndabeni Stole, was deposed from the leadership of ZANU. And when Robert Mugabe came in, the criticism of Stole at the time was that he had become power had become too personal for him, which is the same criticism some people are talking about, which is not the same thing as saying they simply want to take over. And I think part of what happened is to the capture of the president, if you like, by the G40. And that's what has produced this particular tension. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Zuma's negotiation team gets into conversation with the ZANU High Command. The opposition is simply out of the picture because they haven't got a credible, much as one might love them, a coherent alternative that commands hegemonically the political cultures in Zimbabwe politics.
So when the history is written about this particular moment in Zimbabwe's history, will it be seen as the moment that Robert Mugabe misunderstood that he had not built a dynasty strong enough where he could just let his wife slip into the job?
No, not again. I think Zimbabwean politics is not... I know a lot of people talk about...
But personalities are important.
No,
and
wait,
she was...
wait, if I could just finish. I think Robert Mugabe's position was not in question. I think that what has happened tragically is to do with the power struggle that's been going on around him. That's what's happened. So this moment will be read as what happened in that power struggle, not so much about Robert Mugabe, but these kind of factions who were seeing themselves as the anointed ones. And that's one thing. The second thing is a reminder of the way in which the liberation movement, the armed struggle, the war veterans, the military are the stitches that put together the story of Zimbabwe. That is a reminder in that way.
So, very briefly, who will the international community be dealing with when they want to talk to the leader of Zimbabwe in the next few months?
It remains to be seen, but if I can back off from that for a minute, I'll come back to it in a slightly different way. Up to until 2-3 weeks ago, if you ask people in Zimbabwe, if you ask people in the SADC region, if you ask people on the continent, if you ask people in the new economies, whom they think has the kind of political cultural capital within ZANU circles to succeed Robert Mugabe, Mnangagwa is. When I attended some of the rallies that have been going on in the summer, and I went to 1 or 2 of them, and I saw firsthand the reception Mnangagwa was getting. It was like the arrival of a rock star. So he is the pair of steady hand in that sense. So it's impossible to remove him. It was a bad miscalculation on the G40 to think they could write him off history.
Well, George, it's very good to talk to you about this. George Shire, thank you very much.
That's okay.
We have seen how actually the BBC played the PR role when the rise of the current president was taking place, because he became a president in 2017 November, after what the BBC will call a military assisted transition, and what also a BBC called as a blockade to a dynasty plan by Robert Mugabe. But our question still remains, as I mentioned earlier, that some people suggest that the current ruling party of Zimbabwe is a puppet organization which was created by the CIA, which happens to be from the Western world. Then when we reflect about how BBC was doing the PR for them, could that hold water? It's a discussion which I think scholars has to be engaging, because normally in Zimbabwe, towards elections, sometimes we hear actually ZANU-PF accusing any opposition in Zimbabwe which is thought to be genuine, being accused of being a puppet of the Western world. So now we wonder, is it the genuine accusation, or is it the competition of being liked by the master? Because many people, they look up to the Zimbabwean government as if it is pro-Eastern, but deeper digging into how struggles in ZANU-PF are unfolding and how succession is being handled, we see that there is a Western world here in the end. So what is it that? Are they really pro-Eastern or they're pro-Western? We see how Ngomo was also banished by the same Western world. We remember soon after independence in Zimbabwe, there was a disturbance in the western part of Zimbabwe, that is in Matabeleland, where majority of people were being massacred in an operation which is normally known as Gukahund, where it is alleged, according to the Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace figures, over 20,000 Ndebele people lost their lives. And when Robert Mugabe met the then Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Bulawayo, Henry Cullen, who was from Switzerland, he said it was just a moment of madness, and the Western world didn't say anything about whatever Mugabe is presided on. And actually, they went on in 1994 to knight Robert Mugabe to become a say, which leaves us with another question mark. Why would they do that to a person who is accused of presiding over the death of over 20,000 people? Food for thought. And it's a pity that our guest is not here. I think it was interesting to hear the views of our guest when it comes to the relationship of ZANU-PF and the Western world, which is thought to be sour. But investigative journalism will tell us that no, it is not that sour as some people. But yes, we see that the rise of President Emmerson Mnangagwa was actually facilitated by the Western world. And I think that was their own horse. The best person they wanted to replace Robert Mugabe, the Western world, and I'm sure is the current president. But interestingly, yes, the current president has managed to improve, has managed somehow to move away from some of the practices which actually Robert Gabriel Mugabe used to do. And for example, one of the interesting issues which actually the current president have done so far, he actually announced that he doesn't intend to go for the third term, which is seen as somehow a progress in the Zimbabwean politics. I'm sure when the current constitution was written during the unity government, which stretched from 2009 up to 2013, the current president was the justice minister by then. So we have mixed views. Some people are saying the message about resignation is genuine, while others are saying it's not genuine, while others are saying we should celebrate because he said that, while others are saying we should not celebrate because it is being stipulated by the constitution. So we have all these mixed feelings. And let us hear, actually in the past 3 months, he actually mentioned this 2 times that he wants to resign. Let us hear him talking. Let us hear from the horse's mouth. Let us hear.
Kwakuti zvino zvandapere kuritaya chicha ndingaitawo panapa ndikabona kuti pachava nemabhuchari saka ndichafidha ng'ombe dzangu ndichizotengesa ng'ombe pano ndichinowana mari yangu. Saka umwe noumwe ngaafunge zvaachaita, indatofunga kareka. Ane huku dzake chitofunga kuti ndichata huku dzichatengwa, pachata mahoteri akawanda panapa. Huku, mazai, hey! Hamene vasingafungi zvemberi. The Ministry of Tourism and Hospitality Industry is directed to revisit the sector target, more so given the tourism sector potential for growth. So, Minister Coventry, we are creating a state-of-the-art cricket facility. It's only being used by people from somewhere, and you're not training our people, I'll fire you. You must make sure you now train in schools our kids to do cricket, so that later on they'll come and participate here. Because international cricket players will be coming here. But we need also to see our own Zimbabwean people participating. And this duty is on you and the Mkutlan. Is that correct? Yes. Yeah, the two of you, you and the Mkutlan. Develop our people. Now, Kest Covent, the one we are building here must not be below in standard to all international stadiums. So if you don't know, go around and see them. We must produce a better one. You understand? Yes, sir. Okay. The upgrading and the modernization of our sporting facilities across the country should equally be given appropriate attention. Again, COVID, that's what I'm talking about. You should do that. Government will support you. This includes the construction of new community sports facilities, introduction of bucket seats at our stadiums. I know you have asked for this. Such interventions should nurture talent across various sporting codes, including the development of sporting academies, and the result in greater convenience for our sport-loving nation.
Constitution yetu inotiyo after every 5 years tunaenda ku Congress. Takaita Congress yetu about 5 years. Every 5 years tunaenda ku Congress, aditi? Tunaenda ku Congress ikoko tosarza president wetu. President Wanafragara, Matema Viri, 5 years, 5 years. In the Gaita 5 years, Octana, Gapera, Kana Congress, Mukani Zorena. So Nakuita, my last 5 years, Tapera Manjimanji, Denda Kudo Zorora. Denda Congress, Mosaka Umwe, and the Tunamira Stevens Ratsoka Zang, Maziwa.
Hello. In the first videos, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe was actually officially groundbreaking at an area where they're going to build a cricket stadium in Victoria Falls, a border town between Zimbabwe and Zambia. So he was tipping the people that we are building a stadium here and I'm about to resign. So I was thinking that I will keep some cattle or chickens to supply to do business while I'm in retirement. So he was tipping the people that he's about to retire in Victoria Falls, Matabeleland, North Province of Zimbabwe. Then, within a short space of time, without even spending 2 months, he was again in Mutare on the second video, where he said the constitution of his political party and the constitution of the country stipulate that he should not go beyond 2 terms. So he was saying he's going to be resigning anytime soon before the election in Zimbabwe of 2028. Whether he was trying to see who are the people who want to take after him, or it was genuine, it's a question open for discussion. The person who was supposed to be with me, the guest, was saying he's trying to hear what people say. And it is a pity that one of the provinces in Zimbabwe, and unfortunately it's also my home province, the ZANU-PF members of Masvingo, they are saying he should not resign, and they say he should go on. We don't know whether he's going to buy that or whether other provinces are going to follow suit, but that is what he is saying. If he does that, it is a victory for democracy for Zimbabwe, and I'm sure he wants to leave a legacy. He wants to probably is going to perform his best in the next 3 years, knowing that he's going to resign. Probably have learned from what happened to President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, who overstayed his welcome and ended up leaving power in a way which is so humiliating. So we keep our fingers crossed to see whether the president is going to honor what he has promised the country and the world at large. Another interesting issue is likely to be the next chairperson of Southern African Development Community, which is well known as a SADC, and we are going to have a SADC summit in Zimbabwe next month. And he seems to be very, according to him, he's very prepared to be the chairman of SADC. Let us hear him talking for himself that he's prepared to take over the chairman of SADC, so that it might not look as if I'm putting some words in his mouth. Let us watch the following video where he's actually acknowledging that he's prepared. And that video, he said it 5 or 6 months ago.
SADC chairmanship this year brings about great responsibility for our nation. On your part as ministers, the onus is on you to discharge your duties as chairs of the various ministerial committees with utmost distinction and attention to detail for our region, SADC.
He was acknowledging that he's well prepared to take over the reins of SADC. But an interesting issue is that majority of Zimbabwe, they have issues with the 2023 election, and they say SADC said the elections in Zimbabwe were not free, fair, and credible. And they're saying he should not take over chairmanship of SADC because SADC is the only hope for Zimbabweans, and they've forwarded a number of complaints about that election. Now that the fact that they forwarded the complaint to SADC and he's becoming the chairperson of SADC, it is very, very, very disturbing for them, because so majority of Zimbabweans have promised to protest during the SADC summit in Zambia. And why are they promising to protest in Zambia? It is because Zambia have been seen as the most sympathetic country through their president Hakainde Hichilema to the opposition in Zimbabwe. Remember, when the president of Zambia was inaugurated, he actually invited even the then main opposition leader in Zimbabwe, Nelson Chamisa, to attend the inauguration. And of lately, we have seen that the relationship between Zambia and Zimbabwe have been strained time and again. And I think Zimbabwe and Zambia are actually victims of geopolitics, because after the 2023 election, we saw President Ramaphosa of South Africa congratulating President Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe. Well, a deeper reflection on that, President Ramaphosa of South Africa was not congratulating the President of Zimbabwe on behalf of South Africa alone. He was actually congratulating Zimbabwe on President Emmerson Mnangagwa on behalf of BRICS. And also, as we all know, that we are told that President HH is also representing the interests of the Western world. And we have seen that we have some military personnel which are being said are being trained in Zambia. We have also heard that there's an office of AFRICOM for an office for United States Defense, which has been opened in Zambia, which actually the current president of Zimbabwe have seen it as a threat to the security of Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe is being a pawn which is suffering in this whole, and we have seen that the president of Zimbabwe have been condemned by so many people when he opened up about the worsening relations between Zambia and Zimbabwe. So we want to see whether the protests of Zimbabweans will stop President Emmerson Mnangagwa to be the chairperson of SADC, of which I doubt, because this position is rotational. This position is being given to Zimbabwe as a country, not to the person of President Emmerson Mnangagwa. About him complaining about the relations between Zambia and Zimbabwe, we have seen that he actually asked for help in Russia. Yes, I mentioned that his party seems to be a puppet of the Western world. So there is a lot of confusion which needs to be clarified by political scientists, by philosophers and other people. And let us also hear President Emmerson Mnangagwa talking to President Putin while they are in Russia, while he is asking for help, while he was crying that America is isolating him. Unfortunately, the video is said to have leaked without the permission of the responsible authority. Let us hear President Emmerson Mnangagwa speaking in Russia to President Putin recently.
The relations just ended there. And thereafter, both the British and the Americans have not looked upon us. They think that we are too much inclined to the East. But we have no apologies at all. We feel we are better in relations with the people who also respect us, not the persons who look down upon us. So we are very happy to be here. And we are anxious to actually have our relations more comprehensive
and consolidated between ourselves. Yes, we are a very advanced country, but there's a lot that we can learn from you. There's a lot that we can benefit from that relationship. And there's a lot that we can open for the Russian Federation to participate in our economy, especially in the mining sector and in agriculture. There's a lot that we can afford for you to participate. And in that process, the West will run away. You see, the West have just begun consolidating their power in Zambia, our next neighbor. You know, there was a time when Zambia and Zimbabwe won. It was called Northern and Southern Rhodesia. It was won by the British, but they were now separate. And the Americans are consolidating their power in that country, both in terms of security and in terms of financial support to Zambia, to make sure that we feel lonely. But that will not change us, because we have taken a course which, as a people, that we feel we want to be independent, and we choose our friends ourselves. And besides, we are independent today because most of us in the leadership trained here during our war of liberation. We got our independence because we were supported by yourselves here, and you don't forget that history, and you stood by us. So, Mr. President, I am happy to be here, and if opportunity avails later on, I mean, we may find time to chat and go into more detail as which areas we must focus in terms of supporting each other, and in terms of where we feel we need external support, more especially in the area of defense and security, as well as the food security. In those areas we need to be supported, the mechanization of our agriculture and so on. We can't go to the West. We have to come here, because the West would want to see us down. They support our neighbors, Zambia and Malawi, very heavily. But in spite of that, Zimbabwe's economic growth is the fastest growing economy in the region, in spite of us being isolated by the Americans. So, Your Excellency, I'm very happy to be here.
We have actually seen the video of President Emerson Mnangagwa talking to the president of Russia. In short, we have actually managed to reflect on the rise, looming resignation and SADC chairmanship of President Emerson Mnangagwa. We are concluding with a short segment on geopolitics. We actually have seen that probably if you have given me the opportunity to meet the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe today, I might actually tell him probably that what America is doing is not that probably because they want to attack Zimbabwe, but they are feeling that probably their interests are at stake with Russia. So they just want ZANU-PF and Zimbabwe in general to remain in their pockets. So it is very difficult, I think, for Zimbabwe to be an independent country. It needs a leader who stands on his feet, who will say he will engage people on account of how they respect them. So that was the reflection we had. And I think next show we should actually have a reflection on the relation between Zambia and Zimbabwe, looking at how the president is going to fail how he's going to conduct himself as the chairperson of SADC. Because soon he will be the chairperson of SADC, which I think is not going to be stood by any sort of protests, which are actually looming. It's a pity, and it was going to be interesting if we had another voice in the studio in the person of Honorable Jefferson Chitando, but I hope next time you manage to join us. What we had for you on Hot Eyes show today, and this show is meant actually to spark a conversation around the life of the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, his political career, and what can we expect during his reign as the chairperson of SADC, and what can we expect when he resigns. I think one of the days I have to engage members of the ZANU-PF to hear how are they faring with the issue of succession. So to the political scientists, to the philosophers, to the investigative journalists, let us take this conversation deeper, and let us also unpack certain mysteries and myths around the leadership of the president. I'm sure he's willing to make a name. He's willing to leave a legacy, but for him to leave a legacy, we should actually reflect on his life and see what can we learn from his life. What can we learn from his successes? What can we learn from his failures? What can we learn from his tries? What can we learn from his commission? What can we learn from his omissions? For today, I remind you, don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss programs like this one. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook channel page, to our TikTok page at Humanist TV Africa. For inquiries, send us an email at info@humanisttvafrica.com or contact us on WhatsApp +254 74 73 56 767 or visit our website www.humanisttvafrica.com. I thank you for watching, and I would like also to thank my producer Dennis, my hardworking producer, who is always behind the scene, and he was actually mocking me, and he greeted me before we started the program. He greeted me saying, "Good morning, Sheikh Tawia Chinama." Of course, I'm in a cultural dressing, the Arabic cultural dressing, which is normally associated with the Muslims. Anyway, as Humanist TV Africa, it is a sign that we welcome anyone, regardless of your religion, regardless of your political affiliation, or any divisive thing you can think of, whether you are Jew, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, non-religious. We value people as people before their religious or non-religious affiliations or political affiliations. For now, it's bye-bye. Thank you for being with me. Keep watching for the next program.